Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the other side of the corner. Welcome to your latest Chelsea news. Lots popping off, and we can't cover everything in one video. But one thing that I really want to focus on this video is Jamie Carragher is saying a lot of things once again. He's piping up once again. But you know what? There is an element of truth as to what he's saying, but then also there's an element of nuance that he hasn't really considered in this situation. So we want to talk about all of the stuff that Jamie Carragher has been saying. Obviously, we've got the Brighton game coming up that we're going to look into down the track, perhaps in the morning tomorrow, UK time. But yeah, for the time being, I think there is a bigger discussion to be had as to what the current ownership is doing, what the previous ownership did. How do we see it as a fan base, and what is Jamie Carragher talking about in regards to Chelsea? I think this will be very, very interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the other side of the coin, and this is your latest Chelsea news. All right, let's get cracking into the news. This is what Jamie Carragher said over the last 24 hours. Carragher, Chelsea should be title contenders and considered Champions League challengers this season. Much like what I said, right? Instead, their hierarchy seems content to be praised for being the smartest recruiters in the business, the world's richest development club. I mean, there is an element of truth there. I'm not going to lie about it. Whenever I hear praise for Chelsea's strategy, they are made to sound like a wealthier version of Bournemouth or this weekend's opponent, Brighton. Now, before we delve into the other sections of what Jamie Carragher said, let's take a moment and talk about this situation. And I think before we talk about the current situation, it's very important to understand what the previous regime did as well, because sometimes we forget what was going on in order to realize what is happening now, right? So under Roman, since our last Premier League title, which was under Antonio Conte, back in 2015-2016 season, I believe. I'm pretty sure it's that season. Since then, it's almost been, it's been 10 years, right? It's been 10 years. Since then, even under Roman, we've been declining in terms of us really competing in the Premier League. It's been a long time. So this isn't a new phenomenon under the current ownership. This has been happening under Roman as well, where we were just drifting further away and away and away from Manchester City and Liverpool. We were there and thereabouts for top four. We were always making it to Champions League. We were picking up trophies. We picked up the Champions League not that long ago. We picked up, FA Cups and so on and so forth, Europa Leagues. So we've picked up trophies along the way. But in terms of challenging for the Premier League, we haven't done that. And as I said, this isn't a new phenomenon on the new owners. This is dating back to Roman. Now, under Roman as well, if you guys remember, the moment when Frank Lampard became the manager and the season after, once the transfer ban was over, we brought in some big players at that time. I know now we look back and we go, no, those players were not good enough. But at that time, Kai Havertz, Timo Werner, Hakim Ziyech, we've brought in Thiago Silva as a free agent. We even did the transfer of Ben Chilwell during that time frame, who was touted to be one of the best left back, and many more. There's if you go through the list, there's many more. And then once Thomas Tuchel came in, Romelu Lukaku was purchased, and the new ownership, when in their first season, when Todd Bowley was still doing the chairman business and the sporting director business, Aubameyang, Raheem Sterling, Cucurella, so on and so forth. So it wasn't sustainable. It really wasn't sustainable. Under Roman, before we entered the new era, paying the wages that we were paying with the likes of Havertz, with the likes of Timo Werner, with the likes of many other players, and then Romelu Lukaku, it really was not sustainable. This is why the previous regime, by the time the new owners took over, we were incurring losses. Have a look at the financial statements. On every season, we were incurring losses. And one of the prominent reasons behind incurring losses was we don't make enough money as a football club. And it wasn't going to be sustainable if we carried on like that, paying big wages, paying big transfer fees, and not making enough money. Eventually enough, it was going to get caught up to us with the new rules and regulation, with PSR, with FFP, and all of this BS that we've got right now that we need to make sure that we are within those realms. We were never going to be sustainable like that. And as I said, why we wouldn't be sustainable is because we don't make enough revenue. We don't have a big stadium like Spurs or like Arsenal, right? And when you don't generate enough income under the PSR rules, it's very difficult to go out there and purchase players with big transfer fee and big wages, right? So that was the crux of the problem. New owners came in, and in that first 6 months, Todd Bowley tried to continue the same pattern. Aubameyang, Raheem Sterling, Cucurella, Koulibaly, and the list goes on. The list goes on. So soon, the current ownership realized if we continue in this vein, we're going to be even deeper trouble, deeper trouble. So as a fan base, I get it. I understand. This is not what we want. We don't want to see, and I've complained about this. I've talked about this in numerous occasions. Many people tend to think, oh, Miz is just being toxic positive. Have a look at all my videos to all the OGs that have watched my channel for a very, very long time. I've raised all of these concerns. I've done several, top segments with Eunice as well, who was talking about all of this. And we've talked about it and elaborated on all of this on this channel multiple times. Are we a development club? What are we doing buying all of these young players? But I think there is a method to this madness. I'm slowly starting to realize why Chelsea Football Club did what they're doing under this current ownership. Yes, it doesn't drive us to be winning Premier League titles and Champions League titles and this, that, the other. But I think the process is to at least make us sustainable. Meanwhile, once we get ourselves sustainable, hopefully these young players that we're getting will turn out to be top players. And some of them have. And when you look at our current situation, look at our current squad, even though we've got some development players, some of them are really, really good players. Some of them are. Some of them aren't. I'm not denying it one bit, but some of them are as well. And you can utilize those players to build a solid squad and down the track compete for something important. So I think this is what people need to realize, and people like Jamie Carragher, I think this is what they tend to overlook and simply go past it. And I'm going to showcase what Vince had to say. There's a very, very good post, big post from Vince. If you don't follow Vince, make sure you follow him on X. He points out all the reasons as to why we're doing what we're doing. Once again, I reiterate, as a fan base, yes, it hurts. Why can't we, off the back of winning the Club World Cup, go out there and buy the best defender? Why can't we go out there and buy the best striker? We were trying. We were trying to get Osimhen. But those wages, these current owners, they have a strategy. Low transfer fee, low-ish, because it's not like we're paying low transfer fee for everyone. Gittins was 50 million plus. We were looking to pay roughly around 55 million for Xavi Simons. We don't operate in that Enzo Fernandez and Caicedo realm anymore. We did that under the current ownership as well, but we don't do that anymore. There's a reason. We want the transfer fee to be low so that the risk of, if this went south, the risk of it is not going to be that extensive. We want the wages to be low because our wages previously was astronomical. Players like Havertz, Werner, Lukaku, Chilwell recently. Raheem Sterling is a classic case. Raheem Sterling is on 350,000 a week, and that, are we getting that same benefit? These are the reasons. Our football club, with the financial situation we're in, cannot afford to make big mistakes like that. Now, some of you guys might be saying, oh, is our owners poor then? No, it's got nothing to do with owners being poor. Clear Lake are a rich effing institution. They got money. They got money to burn, but it's not about you injecting money into the club. It's not that simple. You can't simply do that, because if you were just allowed to inject as much as money as you can, then PSI and FFP, then we'd be in big trouble. The reason why we can't do what we want to do is we don't make enough revenue. PSI and FFP, they want you to spend what you earn. They don't want you, they're not promoting you to inject money into their club, because then you're putting the club's going to be in debt. The club is going to owe the owner a lot of money. And if the club down the track cannot sustain this and has to liquidate, then the club ends up owing the owner a lot of money. This is why Roman was owed 1.5 billion by the time he was stripped away from Chelsea Football Club. Roman was owed. He didn't get the money back, but that's a separate story. This is what PSI and FFP, they want to stay away from, where the clubs end up owing to the owners a lot of money. This is why the new system is you can only spend what you earn. So you got to increase your earnings. This is why Chelsea, with the stadium that we have, it doesn't generate enough income. We can't make these financial mistakes. So this is why Chelsea go and buy those gems, pay low wages, low transfer fees. Chelsea go and market. They go into the market to Brighton, to Dortmund, to Ajax, and so on and so forth. This is why we all joke around and banter around that Chelsea look like a bigger version of Brighton, a Brighton that's on steroids, an Ajax that's on steroids, Bournemouth, so on and so forth. It's true, but there's a reason behind that. We're trying to be sustainable for the time being. Until and unless the income becomes higher, this is the method to stay as sustainable within the framework of financial fair play. And this is why when I see managers like Enzo Maresca complain, or whatever the case that's been happening over the last few days with our poor results, you got to utilize the squad at its complete form. You have to. And you signed up for this. You don't come into this thinking that, oh, you didn't know, you weren't aware. No, you were very aware what Chelsea were up to. And this is what's happening. So let's have a quick look again as to what Jamie Carragher continues to say. Defeating PSG should have signaled a new era of intent. Regardless of mine or anyone else's opinion of the FIFA event, Chelsea should have, by the way, he said this is a Mickey Mouse trophy that Chelsea won. We won the Club World Cup, and it's not a Mickey Mouse trophy one bit. And we won it through this model. Do you know what I mean? Like, yes, not necessarily directly because of this model. Manager, the players, they really stood up. They developed. But at the same time, you have to say, yeah, we brought in João Pedro during the tournament. And that was a huge game changer. And the owners did that. Sporting directors did that. So yeah, maybe there is an element of the current owners and the sporting directors definitely was a factor in us winning it. But then the players and the managers, they did a bit of a madness as well. The tactics and all of that. They showcased that you can go toe-to-toe against big clubs, and you don't necessarily need to have big names across your team to beat big teams. You can punch above the weight and win big things. Jamie Carragher doesn't want to talk about that. Regardless of mine or anyone else's opinion of the FIFA event, Chelsea should have left the United States with the message, we're here and we're coming for the Premier League and Champions League next. Instead, the next 6 weeks of transfer activity were odd. And he further carries on to say, Maresca has the right to feel let down by his recruiters. He has had a good 12 months doing what was expected in the Premier League, winning the Conference League and adding the Club World Cup. He did also say, why didn't Chelsea go for Mike Mignon? Why didn't they go for Donnarumma? I get all that. I 100% understand that. This transfer window that just finished, the summer window, it was meant to be a definitive one off the back of winning the PSG. And I get it. Certain parts of the fan base are not happy about it, the way it ended. Gittins, Garnacho. We didn't really bolster the CB position. With Levi Colwell being injured, what do we do with the GKs? But I still looked at it that, okay, we brought in João Pedro. We've got Estevan Willian. We've got Andre Santos returning back to Chelsea Football Club. We added Esugu in midfield. I just felt there's still, something there. Wesley Fofana, hopefully he comes back. I know all the news now, these guys are all injured. I get that. But there were elements pointing that we can still compete at the highest level. Yeah, perhaps we did make a blunder with the goalkeeper. We should have got a better goalkeeper. I get it. But at the same time, Robert Sanchez, in the past 4 to 5 months, he barely made, prior to the one against Man United, I don't remember the last time he made a mistake. And as I said, we can't just simply go out there. Like Donnarumma, for instance. There's a reason why he wasn't given a contract extension at PSG because of the wages that he demanded. Man City, on the other hand, can pay those wages because they make a lot of money. We're not going to do that for many reasons. One, we want to keep our wage structure low because, as I said, we need to be financially sustainable. Other factors are, you start paying someone X amount of wages, others start looking that, hey, this guy's just entered the football club, he's on X amount of wages, we've been busting our balls, how come we're not on those wages? The current owners have a philosophy that you're going to get paid well due to how you perform. This is why Caicedo is looking at getting a new contract. I think he did get a new contract. Cucurella got a new contract. Players will get a new contract if you've put in the hard yards for the club. As soon as you enter the club, you're on the starter package. They don't want to make these Raheem Sterling mistakes again. They just don't. Romelu Lukaku, look how tough that was to get rid of from our books. Transfer fees. I know a lot of people will say, well, what happened to the Mike Mignon one? They didn't want to pay overs. They had a certain price tag for that goalkeeper. They didn't want to pay overs. And Mike Mignon, as much as we all wanted him, has he really been lighting it up in the recent times? Probably not. Probably not. Even for France, I've seen him in recent times. He hasn't really been lighting it up. This is why they're investing on the youth. As I said, once again, is it the best way to do this? Is it the best way to go out there and compete for Premier League titles and win? No, it's not. But I think all of us need to start understanding where our club is from a financial standpoint. Very difficult to compete against Liverpool and City and Arsenal, who generate a lot of money. And Liverpool as well, I think prime example. This was the first window where Liverpool really balled out. Prior windows, Liverpool were doing similar scouting business like the way we have been, trying to find these players who are on the cusp of becoming really, really good, and they've got them, and then they've developed them into top players. Players like players like Andy Robertson, for instance, I think came from Hull City. Salah, he was on the cusp of maybe breaking through, but he wasn't some sort of a top-notch footballer when he was at Roma prior to coming to Liverpool. Only when he came to Liverpool, then he started exploding. Sadio Mane from Southampton. I think players like Virgil van Dijk, you could see, okay, they're destined to be top. Alisson, destined to be top. But there were lots of other brilliant pieces of recruitment that Liverpool did to get them to the level where they can compete on a regular basis. Liverpool went through a large period where they weren't competing. up until Jurgen Klopp took over. So look, we have to understand. We have to understand, as I said repeatedly, it's not what we want, but we have to understand. All right, let's check this out. I think this is very, very interesting piece of material from Vince. I think it really encapsulates what we're doing. So Vince replied back to Carragher. Hey, Carragher, I hope you will see this post and read with an open mind. I have read and heard your comments on Chelsea under Blueco and feel that you're a bit misinformed. Blueco are rebuilding the entire structure of the club, including a complete makeover of the squad, and you have to agree with me that with such a change, the club won't be stable in a couple of years. I feel you have forgotten what happened to Roman and the club before Blueco took over. As I said, we were making losses under Roman, and that was not sustainable. And we haven't competed in the Premier League, even under Roman, since Antonio Conte. In your latest article, you questioned the direction of the club compared to the club under Roman Abramovich, and also talked about how they keep buying young players. Well, I need to remind you that Blueco's first transfer window was bold and ambitious. Yes, Aubameyang, Raheem Sterling, Cucurella, Koulibaly. But it ended up as one of the Chelsea's worst windows in recent history, and we are still paying a big price for it today. I believe you saw Sterling to Chelsea for close to 50 million as a major statement. I did. The same with Koulibaly. Once again, I thought Koulibaly was a fine piece of business to Chelsea and the rest that happened in that window. Today, it doesn't look like it. You said this about Raheem Sterling in 2018. He deserves everything he gets. What he is doing for Manchester City now, we talk about Aguero, Silva, De Bruyne, he's in that company. I'm sure you don't think about him like that since he joined Chelsea. And that uncertainty is likely one of the reasons Blueco decided to rebuild with young players on low wages and high resale value. Because if any mistake is made, we won't be in a situation where we struggle to sell and recover our funds. And it has proven to be case so far. The downside is on the pitch, but we are looking for balance, not perfection at the moment. As I said, this is why I keep reiterating, ladies and gentlemen, that there's still enough there to compete. Is it perfect? No. There's flaws. Goalkeeper, CB, left wing, there's flaws, but there's enough to compete. As Vince is saying, looking for balance, not perfection. On-field stability will come when the rebuilding process stabilizes. And as I said, it could take a little while to stabilize because of the financial implications. Until we get that new stadium, it could be difficult, but this is where you need to punch above the weight. The misconception here is Chelsea owners are impatient with the rebuilding of the squad and putting together a sustainable structure and aren't in a hurry to throw everything out of the window and gamble in the name of trying to win the league or compete for the biggest trophy immediately. It's an illusion to think we have arrived despite winning the Club World Cup. As I say, some parts of me say that, whatever the owners and the directors did, it contributed to winning the Club World Cup. But another side, I'm thinking, do you know what? I feel like they've stumbled upon it because the players and the managers really rose. Do you know what I mean? They really, they rose up to the occasion. But once again, who are the ones who are bringing all of these players in? It's the owners and the directors. So they do need to get praised to a certain level. Yes, you talked about not signing my Mignon or Donnarumma. Mignon was going to cost 25 million euros. Why spend that much on a player whose career is going down and isn't a clear upgrade? Now, look, it might have been an upgrade, but once again, Chelsea had a certain price and they were not going to pay over that. And that's fine. That's fine. Donnarumma, his wages were too much. All of this is due to the financial implications that we find ourselves in. And don't forget, we've got a lot of other goalkeepers in our books. So players needed to leave before we could bring in new goalkeepers. PSG decided not to renew Donnarumma's contract because of the wages he was demanding was outrageous, according to reports. Only City or Manchester United, who generate a lot more than Chelsea, can afford that. I expect a former professional football of your status to understand that the financial aspects of football today are as important as the sporting aspect. You talked about how many billions Chelsea have spent, but I haven't heard you talk about how much Chelsea have generated or how they have managed to bring down excessive wage structure under the new owners. Absolutely. As I said, this is a revenue stream for us. Because we don't make money elsewhere, we do need to do player trades to bring in money to the football club to keep us sustainable. This summer, we basically made more than we spent, or does it not matter? And as I said, yes, it all makes it sound like, oh, we're winning transfer windows, but we're not really winning anything on field. I get it, but we need to do this to stay sustainable, or else our club is just going to go into the bin. So try and understand that the model isn't geared towards winning or competing immediately, but for a more sustainable winning culture and financial future. You don't have to like it to understand it and add context to your analysis. Thanks. I mean, do you know what? Vince nailed it. Vince really did nail that. I've said it many times. This model that the owners and the directors have, yeah, it doesn't look like it's there to win trophies. I've said it, I've criticized it. But I think over the last 4 to 5 months, I've started to realize we have to understand why the club is doing this. We have to. And within the means of it, I think there's still enough to still compete and do a lot better than what we have been doing in recent times. Especially the last few games, we can be a lot better than that. And this is why I go back to managers such as Maresca, that look, you can sit there and complain, but it's better to go to the drawing board and get the best out of the squad that you have. We need to do this. This is what Chelsea Football Club is at the current status due to the financial implications. This is who we are right now. But even through all of this, we can still compete at the highest level. That's my personal opinion. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know your thoughts about everything Jamie Carragher said. Do you fully agree with what he's saying? Do you see what the owners are doing? Do you feel even with the way the owners are running the show, we can still compete because our squad isn't all rubbish? Do you feel Enzo Maresca can do a lot more with what he's been given? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Smash up the like button if you're here for the first time. Subscribe, hit the bell notification to stay in touch with all my content. Till next time, take care. See ya. Bye.